Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today we're going to go way back in time,
Oh, yeah.
and we're going to explore the emergence of the first cities.
Right.
So I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
You've provided some really interesting sources, a mix of educational PDFs,
Yeah.
and I'm really looking forward to diving in. So I think the big question we're tackling here is how did we go from, small nomadic hunter-gatherer groups
Yeah.
to these large, complex urban centers?
Exactly.
It's a huge leap in human history.
It is.
And there's so much to unpack.
Yeah, for sure. So to really get a grasp on this, we have to start with a picture of life before cities.
Okay.
So imagine small groups of humans constantly on the move, hunting and gathering for survival. Their lives completely intertwined with nature.
Yeah.
And this was the dominant way of life for the vast majority of human history.
Right.
So the shift to city life was a truly momentous change.
It really puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got these nomadic groups.
Yes.
What happened next?
Well, around 10,000 BC, in a region we call the Fertile Crescent, something revolutionary occurred. Agriculture.
Agriculture.
This area, spanning from Egypt through parts of the Middle East, had rich soil and was nourished by major rivers like the Nile, the Tigris, and the Euphrates.
Ah, yes, the Fertile Crescent.
Yes.
It's practically synonymous with the birth of civilization.
Absolutely.
But why were these rivers so important?
Well, these rivers would flood annually.
Okay.
And when they receded, they left behind incredibly fertile silt.
Oh, wow.
Perfect for growing crops.
Oh.
Early humans figured out how to harness this developing irrigation techniques to control the water and make their harvests even more bountiful.
Okay.
The result?
What?
Surplus food.
Okay. Now that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, having extra food must have had a huge impact on these societies.
Absolutely. For the first time, not everyone had to spend every waking moment hunting and gathering just to survive.
Oh, wow.
This meant that people could start to specialize in other skills.
Okay.
Some folks could focus on becoming expert toolmakers or pottery artisans, while others could dedicate themselves to trading goods.
So you're saying that a simple surplus of food led to the birth of specialized jobs trade and a more complex social structure.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
We start to see three distinct ways of life emerging.
Okay.
Agriculture, crafts, and trade.
Okay.
And suddenly, these people aren't just surviving side by side, they're relying on each other.
Right.
The seeds of a more interconnected, complex society are being sown.
That's a fascinating insight.
Yeah.
So these communities are growing, they're becoming more interconnected?
Yes.
What happens next?
Well,
Is this how we get our first cities?
you got it.
Okay.
These growing communities, fueled by specialization and trade, eventually become our first cities. We're talking larger populations, organized governance, sophisticated infrastructure like irrigation systems, and defensive walls.
Okay, I can definitely picture it.
Yes.
Walls, bustling trade,
Uh-huh.
people working different jobs.
Yeah.
It feels a lot more like the cities we know today.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can see this in early Mesopotamia with city-states like Sumeria.
Okay.
Each city-state functioned like its own independent mini-kingdom, with its own ruler laws and even armies.
So each city was essentially its own little world.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
But remember, there were different paths to early state formation. For example, ancient Egypt followed a different model.
Okay.
Instead of many independent city-states, they unified Upper and Lower Egypt into a single nation-state,
Okay.
ruled by a pharaoh.
So different approaches, but both rooted in this key transition from nomadic life to settled agriculture and specialized roles within the society. What I'm curious about is, were these early cities some kind of utopia? Was everyone happily farming and crafting together in perfect harmony?
Well, not quite. They were definitely a far cry from a utopia.
Okay.
These cities had very clear social hierarchies.
Right.
Imagine a pyramid structure.
Okay, I'm picturing this pyramid.
Yeah.
Who's at the bottom?
Sadly, at the very bottom, you would find slaves.
Oh, okay.
Above them were the farmers,
Oh, wait.
who made up the largest portion of the population. Then came the artisans, crafting all sorts of goods.
Okay.
And higher up still, we find the priests,
Yeah.
who held considerable power due to the importance of religion in these societies.
Right. Religion was deeply intertwined with every aspect of life back then.
It was.
And of course, at the very top of the pyramid.
Is the king or the pharaoh,
Right.
the ultimate ruler.
Makes sense. Speaking of religion, what were the people in these ancient cities worshiping?
Both Mesopotamian and Egyptian cities were polytheistic, meaning they believed in many gods and goddesses.
Right.
Temples weren't just places of worship. They are often centers of civic life as well.
So religion and governance were really closely linked.
Yes.
Much more so than we're used to today.
Yeah.
And, speaking of pivotal developments, there's one we can't forget.
Right.
The invention of writing.
Absolutely.
Both Mesopotamia with its cuneiform script and Egypt with its hieroglyphs.
Yes.
Developed sophisticated writing systems.
Very sophisticated.
And this was absolutely monumental.
Oh, yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
No more relying solely on oral tradition.
Exactly.
Writing wasn't just about communication.
Right.
It allowed for record keeping, lawmaking,
yes.
and the transmission of knowledge across generations.
It's incredible.
It's hard to overstate how important that was.
It really is.
It basically marks the end of prehistory and the dawn of recorded history.
Yes.
It's a turning point for humanity.
Absolutely a turning point.
Yeah.
For sure.
We'll be right back to continue exploring this fascinating topic.
Okay. Welcome back to the deep dive.
So before the break, we were talking about the invention of writing.
Right.
A pivotal moment in human history.
It's incredible to think about, isn't it?
It is.
How this one development, the ability to record our thoughts and knowledge, changed everything.
Yeah, and you know what's fascinating to me?
What's that?
Is how many parallels we can draw between these ancient cities and our modern urban centers.
Yeah.
Even though they existed thousands of years ago, we can see the roots of so many aspects of our lives today.
Oh, for sure.
In those early civilizations.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What kind of parallels are we talking about?
Well, think about specialization, which we talked about earlier.
Right.
It's still a fundamental principle of our modern economy.
Oh, yeah.
We have a mind-boggling array of specialized jobs today.
We do.
From software developers to surgeons.
Right.
And we rely on each other's expertise, just like those early artisans and traders did.
That's true. I mean, I can't build a computer or perform surgery.
Yeah.
I rely on others for that.
Exactly.
It's amazing to think that this interdependence we see today goes all the way back to ancient times.
It really does highlight how fundamental these concepts are to human society.
Yeah.
And another great example is trade.
Okay.
It flourished in ancient cities just like it does today.
Right.
Only now it's on a global phenomenon connecting us across continents.
Yeah.
We can order something online and have it shipped from the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And it all started with those early marketplaces.
That's a great point. The seeds of global trade were sown thousands of years ago. And, there's another parallel that just struck me.
What's that?
Governance.
Oh, yeah.
Just like those early city-states and kingdoms, we still rely on systems of law in order to manage complex populations.
Exactly. Our systems might be more elaborate.
Right.
But the basic need for rules and leadership to ensure some degree of order, that's something humans figured out way back then.
Right. We've got laws, courts, elected officials.
Yeah.
It's all a way of creating structure and managing a large group of people living together.
Absolutely.
And you know what else?
What?
Ancient cities were centers of culture and innovation.
They were.
Just like cities today.
Absolutely. Temples and marketplaces drew people together.
Yeah.
Just as our museums, theaters, and restaurants do today.
Right.
Cities have always been magnets for talent, ambition, and creativity.
It's like they concentrate all this human energy and potential into one place.
Yeah.
It's no wonder they become hubs for so much creativity and innovation.
That's exactly right. It's this concentration of people and ideas that makes cities such dynamic and ever-evolving places.
Yeah.
And it all started back in those ancient settlements, from the bustling streets of ancient Sumeria to the towering skyscrapers of today's megacities. The human impulse to create, connect, and build something bigger than ourselves is a constant thread throughout history.
It's incredible to think about the journey from those first small agricultural settlements to the massive, sprawling urban landscapes we have today.
It is amazing.
But as you were saying, there are so many connections between then and now.
There are.
It makes you realize that history isn't just about dates and names.
Right.
It's about understanding the roots of our own modern society.
And while we can marvel at the ingenuity of our ancient ancestors, we also have to recognize that cities have always faced challenges.
Oh, of course.
Those challenges might look different today, but they are still very real.
That's a good point. I mean, today we're grappling with issues like overcrowding, pollution, and inequality in many urban centers.
Exactly. So while we can admire those who built the first cities, it's important to acknowledge that they weren't perfect.
Yeah.
And today we face a similar challenge.
Right.
How do we ensure that our cities are sustainable and equitable for everyone?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Which is a big question.
How do we take what we've learned from the past
Right.
and apply it to the present to create better, more sustainable cities for the future?
It's a question we all have a stake in answering, but I think it's important to remember that humans have always been problem solvers. And just as our ancestors found solutions to the challenges they faced, I believe we can too.
I love that positive outlook.
Well,
I think it's easy to get overwhelmed by the problems,
yeah.
but looking back at history can remind us of just how innovative and adaptable humans can be.
Absolutely. And who knows what amazing innovations lie ahead.
Right.
We're standing on the shoulders of those who came before us, and we have the potential to build upon their achievements and create truly remarkable urban environments for generations to come.
Okay. I'm feeling inspired now.
Right.
But before we get too carried away thinking about the future of cities,
Okay.
let's take a moment to recap what we've learned about those first ancient cities.
Okay.
We started by imagining life before cities,
Right. Yeah.
highlighting the nomadic lifestyle of hunter-gatherers.
Exactly. Then we traveled to the Fertile Crescent.
Yes. Where agriculture took root and the first cities began to emerge.
And we talked about how the unique geography of this region, particularly those incredible rivers, made it possible to produce surplus food.
Yes, and we saw how that surplus of food led to some really important changes. Specialization trade and more complex social structures.
Right. It's amazing how one key development can have such a ripple effect across society.
It is, and from there we explored the rise of the first cities themselves. We talked about Mesopotamia and its city-states, each functioning like an independent mini-kingdom, and Egypt with its unified nation-state ruled by a pharaoh.
We delved into those social hierarchies, the pyramid structure with the king or pharaoh at the top and slaves, sadly, at the very bottom.
Right.
And we discussed the crucial role of religion and how intertwined it was with governance.
Yes, and of course we can't forget about the invention of writing.
Right.
It was such a monumental development that marked the end of prehistory and ushered in the era of recorded history.
You know, as we've been talking about all of this.
I've been thinking about those ancient city dwellers.
Yeah.
They weren't just names in a history book.
Right.
They were real people dealing with the challenges of their time, building their lives and creating something new. What was it like to live in those first cities?
That's a great question. It's easy to get caught up in the broad historical sweep and forget that these were real people, just like us, trying to make their way in the world. Imagine yourself walking through the bustling streets of an ancient city.
Okay, I'm trying to picture the sights, the sounds, the smells. What would I see around me?
You might see towering ziggurats reaching towards the sky or massive pyramids dominating the landscape. You'd hear the clang of metal from the workshops, the shouts of traders in the marketplace, the chanting of priests in the temple.
I can almost hear it now. It must have been quite a sensory experience.
Absolutely. And think about the smells, the aroma of freshly baked bread from the bakeries, the pungent spices in the marketplace, maybe even the less pleasant smells of animal waste and open sewage.
It's a good reminder that these cities weren't always glamorous.
Yeah.
But they were vibrant and full of life.
They were.
And they were shaping the future in ways those people could never have imagined.
That's right. They were laying the groundwork for the cities we live in today, for the interconnected world we inhabit, and for the very way we organize ourselves as a society, their innovations, their struggles, their triumphs. It's all part of our story.
I think that's a perfect place to pause our deep dive. We'll be back shortly to wrap up our exploration of ancient cities and leave you with some final thoughts.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were really trying to imagine what life was like in these cities.
Yeah.
The sights, the sounds, even the smells.
It really helps us connect with them on a human level, even though thousands of years separate us.
It really does. And it makes me realize that
Yeah.
despite all the technological advancements we've made, we're still driven by the same basic needs and desires as those early urban dwellers.
For sure.
The need for food, shelter, community, and a sense of purpose.
That's so true. And when we think about it that way, the story of ancient cities becomes a story about human resilience, creativity, and our incredible capacity for reinvention. It's a story that continues to unfold in our cities today.
Each generation adding its own chapter.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of ancient cities, what's the key takeaway
Sure.
you want to leave our listener with?
I think the biggest takeaway is the legacy of those ancient cities is all around us.
Okay.
The next time you walk through your own city, take a moment to appreciate the echoes of the past.
Okay.
The roads, the buildings, the way we organize ourselves. It's all built upon foundations laid thousands of years ago.
That's a powerful thought. We're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
A continuum stretching back to those first tentative steps towards urban life.
Exactly. And that story is far from over. As we navigate the challenges of the 21st century, we can draw inspiration from those who came before us. They were innovators, problem solvers, and they adapted to their environment to create something new.
And now it's our turn to do the same. We have the opportunity and the responsibility to shape our cities into thriving, sustainable, and equitable places for generations to come.
Well said. I think that's a great note to end on.
It has been an absolute pleasure diving into this fascinating topic with you and to our listener. We hope you enjoyed this journey back in time. We encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking questions about the world around you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.